Hello everyone, welcome to EVTN News, and today it's been a busy week, for news at least, and so I'm going to go over that news with you. Um, I do want to do a short recap of the USCCB meeting, and I don't have I don't have any links, but take a look at my channel. And I thought there were some interesting video clips. I did share those. Strickland was there. I heard rumblings that he might show up, and he did. And so he's technically categorized as a bishop emeritus, and they're all invited to the meeting. I just don't think they can vote. But they can speak, and he did. And when they were talking about banning LMNOP surgeries in Catholic hospitals, which kind of more of a formality than anything else, but Strickland took the opportunity to discuss Father James Martin and condemn him, and encourage the bishops to consider releasing a statement against Martin, which he has promptly ignored. And oh, all right, I'm going to talk about this just in a minute. I have actually this in the show notes, my notes. So he also talked about this situation, and it was a short video, so you've probably seen it. If you haven't, it's on my channel. Take a look. It's a 1-minute video clip, but Gio Benitez, an ABC News anchor who is openly LMNOP, joined a Catholic church in New York City and received the sacrament of confirmation just recently. On Monday, November 10th, he shared his video of his confirmation mass at the Church of St. Paul the Apostle in Manhattan, and his sponsor was his husband. Um, it was a moment partly inspired by the late Pope Francis's legacy of inclusivity. It wasn't until 6 months ago that Benitez began making his way back to the Catholic Church. After Pope Francis died on April 21st, Benitez said he was inspired by Father James Martin's appearance on Good Morning America. Uh, Martin talked about Francis's more progressive views, and of course the quote, "Who am I to judge?" was, quoted. While Father James Martin S.J. did not participate in the sacrament, he was in the photo afterwards. And so at the USCCB meeting, Strickland brought the scandal up, and people on social media, there were Novus Ordo conservatives were critical of Strickland, and it just kind of underscores a major problem with the Novus Ordo conservative crowd. There's a pharisaical hyper-legalism with blind obedience to authority, and in this case the authority is a bishop's conference, but it kind of highlights the crisis in the church, right? The bishops aren't saying anything, they're not doing anything about it. In fact, this was, a fully valid and licit mass in full communion with the bishop. I guess in this case it would be Cardinal Dolan. But the problem is they're not doing anything. Now, I actually did watch a video clip, and I don't know. I watched a video clip of the ceremony, and it didn't look like there was a sacrament. So I don't know if they did the sacrament, or because the priest just laid hands on him. He didn't use any of the oil of chrism, and so I don't know if the video clip was intended to show the sacrament or just the priest giving him a blessing. Um, it was definitely a stunt, and people will say Pope Leo needs to do something about it, but they're the ones that have been watching this channel, because if you're watching this channel, you know that Leo's not going to do anything about it. Sorry. Alright, getting back to the USDCB meeting, there were a few other notable things. I didn't post any of the immigration discussion. It was almost a unanimous vote that the bishops voted to approve a statement criticizing Trump and his immigration policy. And I did look at the USCCB's financial statement for last year. They made $180 million in government grants. They received $180 million in government grants. Now, I'm interested to see what the financial statements look like after this year. So maybe sometime in the spring, we'll be able to get that number, and I'll be able to discuss that with you and see, because I would guess it's going to be a lot lower, because the bishops, they haven't, the USCCB, they have urgent messages of immigration after their funding gets cut. Every time their funding is cut, they ramp up the urgency, and so the urgency is much higher now. And how many dioceses does this affect? I mean, really, if you look at it, how many bishops are directly impacted by this? And if you're so concerned about immigrants, the best idea would be to integrate them into the parishes, and the easiest way to do that is use a common language, which the Roman Rite has, but the Novus Ordo doesn't. And so they'll have Spanish masses and English masses and hybrid masses, and it doesn't work for anyone. But if you have a Latin mass, that's the language of the church. And if you had that universally across the world, then bringing them in wouldn't actually be a problem, because they'd be able to come to the mass. And traditionalists, some of them pay attention. Some of them people watch, but most of them just kind of mind their own business. And that's the best way to integrate them into the church, is just bringing them in to a mass that there's a universal language. So thanks to Vatican II, we have a lot of well, I guess you could call it borders or walls that were built by language barriers. But Pope Francis said about building bridges. Where's the bridge? Where's the bridge in the language barrier? If you didn't have the language barrier, then you would be building a bridge, not walls. So, yeah, that's just one way to support immigrants, but no, you just have to release statements and ask for more government funding. And that's just what you're going to get. The last thing I wanted to point out was that one of the, I don't know if it was the finance secretary, or I forget what his title actually was, but he presented, and I have the video clip on my channel, but he said that the USCCB has a $4 million deficit with its headquarters building, and that's like insurance and expenses, and I was like, wow, that's expensive. So I don't know what they're going to do with that. They'll probably sell it, because I would imagine some of their employees work remotely anyway, so you could just rent a property for a lot cheaper, just have one base office, and probably, I mean, there's so many properties that you could operate pretty much out of anywhere. I mean, how many vacant rectories are there? So you could use parish offices that don't have staff anymore, that have been merged. Oh, and that's kind of a spoiler with upcoming stories in this show, so stay tuned for that. But before we get to that, the Diocese of Charlotte has stated that the altar rail use will only be discontinued in St. Mark Catholic Church effective November 30th, after its pastor announced that Bishop Michael Martin had requested that the change be made. The Assistant Director of Communications for the Diocese of Charlotte informed LifeSite News that Bishop Martin has not ordered the altar rails to be discontinued in diocese churches effective November 30th. stating that this decision was made by the pastor of St. Mark Catholic Church. Father John Putnam, who happens to be the judicial vicar of the diocese, had announced in a letter dated November 7th that Martin asked that the parishes no longer use the altar rails for Holy Communion. So again, this is, it's more of just wording and what's the truth and what's not. No one really knows. So, okay. Oh, and in light of the Tucho's note against the Marian titles Co-Redemptrix and Mediatrix of all graces, the SSPX has published a response. It writes that the note is characterizing the terminology of the Church and seeks to minimize the role entrusted by God to Our Lady in the work of the redemption. Her universal and necessary role in the dispensation of grace is weakened almost to the point of denial. Tucho dethrones the Virgin Mary and offends divine wisdom, and so to make public reparation for this, the priests of the SSPX held a prayer service Sunday, November 16th at every Mass. The prayer was a litany of Our Lady and the Stabat Mater. So, they're doing something about it. Good to see. Good to hear. Good to see if you went there. Good to hear if good to hear if you're reading or listening. I guess you can't hear if you're reading. I have to think about my language too. Talk about language barrier. Sometimes, yeah, I'm doing, I wasn't all together with it this morning, a little bit more with it now, but as you can kind of tell, that's just what you got. But I call it like I see it, and sometimes, yeah, sometimes I'm not speaking the greatest. Okay. Archbishop Miguel Mari Buendia, the Apostolic Nuncio to Great Britain, sounds like a very British name, told bishops November 13th that Pope Leo told him he would not abrogate Traditionis Custodes, but the Archbishop made headlines by telling members of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of England and Wales that the Pope would grant bishops who requested a 2-year renewable exemption. Now, he walked it back today, just a few hours before showtime. So, he basically said, like, oh, that may or may not have been what I said, and that was not a public comment. I don't think he confirmed or denied anything. But, so this is probably the policy. I mean, until we get anything else, this is the closest to an official announcement, or even, a rumor. Not rumors, but this is the most direct reporting that we've had so far. So what that means is that all of the rigid restrictions of Pope Francis will continue to exist. However, any diocesan, any bishop who requests an extension for a diocesan Latin Mass will have it granted. As we have seen in the United States, that seems to be the case. As a loud vehicle drives past. That seems to be the case in the United States. Because there have only been a few bishops who have requested extensions. And they've been approved. The rest have crushed the Mass. So, and a lot of them, they were too lazy to even make a request, and it really wasn't that hard. People, there's no defense for it. There's literally no defense. It's because all you have to do is even just ask the pastor, write up a few sentences, I'll sign my name and send it to Rome. That's all you have to. You don't even have to do anything. Just have a 30-second conversation with the pastor. It doesn't even take that long. 15 seconds, and say, hey, just write this letter, and we'll send it over, and I'll let you know what the response is. So a lot of them are eager to crush the Mass. And so this policy, people are saying, some of the traditionalists initially celebrated. And the problem with that is that this is going to target the bishops who are friendly towards a traditional Mass. So not target them, but it will demonstrate who is friendly towards the Mass and the traditional community. And then they're going to be put on a list, and it's a blacklist. This is personally what I believe, what I've seen, and what I think will happen is that these bishops will be put on a blacklist and they will not be eligible for promotions, never be named cardinal, certainly not. And that's the real motivation behind this, because otherwise, if you're approving all diocesan masses, then just do away with Traditionis Custodes for good. Okay. I think that's all I have for that. Alright, in October, Pope Leo received a delegation from the Archdiocese of Los Angeles led by Archbishop Jose Gomez. Among them were two men from California who have been in a marriage since 2023. So one of the men wrote on social media, when Leo heard we are married, Leo received them with unmistakable warmth and kindness, not a hint of hesitation. So my question with this was, why are they in a delegation from the Archdiocese of Los Angeles? Who invited them? Why did Archbishop Gomez bring them along? That's scandalous. Archbishop Gomez was seen as a conservative. Cardinal Dolan is too. Couldn't tell. Okay. News from Austin. So, they're not just attacking the Latin Mass, as I've been saying many times, and you've already seen it in this video. They're not just attacking the Latin Mass, they're attacking Novus Ordo, any attempt at reverence in the Novus Ordo. Bishop Daniel Garcia, less than 2 months ago, replaced the ambitious Bishop Joe Vasquez, who was promoted to Houston. This is Bishop Daniel Garcia replaced Vasquez in Austin, Texas. Vasquez he's crushed some of the masses there at Austin. And remember, Vasquez was rewarded for crushing all the diocesan masses in Tyler, Texas, when he covered for Strickland after Strickland was removed. So Vasquez is a mass crusher, and Garcia wasn't satisfied with that. So he wrote his Vicar General wrote a memorandum to parishes. It says, over the past few years, the practice of some parishes of placing a kneeler out for the distribution of Holy Communion has become more common. Some priests report that the reason for bringing out the kneeler is that some people who kneel for the reception of Holy Communion are finding it difficult to stand back up after receiving. If this is the case, the priest should have a pastoral conversation with the communicant to explain that they are not offending God by not kneeling. Okay, no one actually thinks that. And that they have the priest's recommendation to stand to receive our Lord with reverence and devotion. Of course, kneeling is more reverence, but can't have that. Anyway, what does he say? He doesn't. I don't think he referred to the communion procession, but he said the general instruction for the Roman Missal says that communion is to be received standing unless an individual, the member of the faithful, wishes to receive communion while kneeling. Which they do, because they have the kneeler, and so they receive communion kneeling. It's really not that hard to understand, but these modernists are trying to distort that. Anyway, he says, placing a kneeler near the distribution of Holy Communion could confuse the faithful regarding what is the norm, while sending a message that one way of receiving Holy Communion is more or less appropriate. Well, it is. Bishop Modernist, and placing a kneel or kneeling distribution of Holy Communion could put undue pressure on the communicant to receive communion kneeling, which may or may not be his or her desire. Wow. So there's like an off chance that someone could be offended. I don't know. I really don't know. All right, so bishops are not actually allowed to ban people from kneeling to receive communion. And so he doesn't, but he says the bishop appreciates the reverence of our parishioners, blah, blah, blah. The faithful are also permitted to kneel to receive Holy Communion. At the same time, it is important to catechize the faithful that one can receive Holy Communion with the same reverence while standing, and that there should not be an emphasis on kneeling for Holy Communion by priests, deacons, and lay liturgical leaders. Lay liturgical leader. What? Wait, what? Lay liturgical leaders. So there's lay people that lead the liturgy? Anyway, basically, priests are supposed to bully people who kneel for Holy Communion and pressure them not to. What a pathetic bishop. That's disgusting. And less than 2 months after taking over, don't ever give your money to that bishop. That's terrible. It's unbelievable. Here's another terrible bishop. Weisenberger, Archdiocese of Detroit. Archdiocese of Detroit announces 2-year restructuring to involve every parish. The Archdiocese of Detroit is embarking upon a 2-year process of restructuring that will involve every Catholic parish in southeast Michigan, with the goal of thoughtfully aligning parishes, clergy, and communities to flourish for generations to come, Archbishop Weisenberger announced this past weekend. Like many dioceses around the country, the Archdiocese of Detroit has seen declines in the number of Mass-attending Catholics, ordained priests, and participation in the sacraments in recent decades. And so Weisenberger's solution is to ban most of the Latin Masses, ban all Ad Orientem Novus Ordo Masses, and merge parishes, and create a crisis. Fire the seminary professors he doesn't like, promote immigration instead of Catholicism. So, good luck. You see the destruction of a diocese. It's sad to see. It's really sad. But, you know, the Pope could do something about it. Too bad he won't. He could stop the scandal. Who's going to speak up? All we have is Bishop Strickland, and he can't even vote. All right. This is a big deal. This next story. The Peruvian abuse case involving priest Alotiro Vazquez, known as Padre Lute, has taken an unexpected turn. Pope Leo has granted him laicization, effectively closing the case without a canonical trial. I'm trying to browse this article. I think that's what they did with McCarrick. There was no canonical trial because they didn't want the details to come out. So the case centers on 3 sisters who accused Lute of abusing them when they were children between ages 9 and 13. Lute acknowledged the acts, according to reporting, but claims they do not constitute crimes because of certain circumstances. because they weren't that bad. They were just sins, not really bad sins. Anyway, I shouldn't be laughing, sorry. The Info Vaticana reported that the sisters had been summoned in person because the cleric handling the case had important news for them. They received a folded sheet of paper informing them that Leo had granted him laicization, thereby closing the canonical process. The sisters had met with Cardinal Prevost on April 5th, or I guess, I don't know, was he the Bishop Prevost on April 5th, 2022, when he was Bishop of Chiclayo. He said he believed them, promised support, and opened a preliminary investigation, but took no substantial investigative steps, such as formal statements. This was a black mark on his resume. And now, he's closed the case. Okay. The authorized biography of Leo by Elise Ann Ellen devotes 25 pages to the case. Prevost recounted an episode shortly before the death of Pope Francis. He said Prevost received a phone call on 24th of March asking him to come to Santa Marta discreetly. So Prevost said he had snuck in unseen via a service staircase. After discussing routine matters, he told the ailing Francis he was afraid of being asked for his resignation. However, Pope Francis did not ask for his resignation, and they laughed together. Furthermore, Prevost told Allen that he was concerned that the case in Peru might worry some cardinals and cause problems during the conclave. But it didn't, because a lot of them are McCarrick cardinals. They are current, present tense. They were promoted because of McCarrick, because they could keep their mouth shut on certain things. So he mishandled this case, and then he covered it up. So Pope Francis II, I don't know. Alright, thanks for commenting. More gaslighting. That's why so few priests request the extension. Yeah, because they'll be blacklisted. You can't do that. In fact, a lot of the new bishops, besides being from Chicago, that's pretty much new bishops in the United States are mostly from Chicago. That's just been a pretty consistent trend under Leo. But I think they're going to be less eager to work with the Latin Mass community because of this, because they know if they're aspiring, if they're intending to climb the ladder, then they don't want traditionalism on their resume. And they know that they'll be stuck if they do help the Latin Mass community in any way. Our pastor here in the Diocese of Knoxville, who says Latin Mass, he seemed very depressed at the low Mass yesterday. Well, you can understand why. What generations do they really expect to survive? Yeah. And all lavenders. Diocese of Knoxville. So all Latin Masses are being eliminated, I believe, in the Diocese of Knoxville. And all it would have taken was an extension request to the Vatican. And that's why we don't trust the bishops, because they'll release statements about immigrants, but they won't help their fellow Catholics in the United States, their citizens. But the thing is, they know that a lot of people are withholding money because of what happened in 2018 and 2020, and then in 2021 with the 2018 with the molesting scandals, 2020 with shutting down, banning us, locking us out of churches in a lot of places. 2021 banning us from Latin Mass and sacraments in some cases. We just don't want it. And then one was the LMNOP blessings. I mean, it's just scandal after scandal, and it's not showing any signs of slowing down. You know, the synod on synodality. There is a LifeSite News article. Let me pull it up. This will be my last. This will be the last thing I talk about. Again, I don't have it posted in the description. I have most of my links posted in the description, but today there's one or two that aren't. But you can find them very easily on LifeSite News or Gloria TV. But the Synod document, the LifeSite headline says that the Synod document suggests women's leadership female deacons will be addressed in the final Synod report. Can't wait for that, right? And there is also other things that are going to be addressed there, like I think LMNOP, just more of the same. I mean, it's more Francis Church, and I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have any pulse on what's expected to happen. Leo has signaled he's not very eager to encourage women deacons. Well, I guess that's you can't. It's heresy, but he wasn't a very big supporter of it in at least his interview. I'll just say. Latin Mass band will only make their dollar shortfall work. Oh, that's where I was going. Yeah, so in terms of money, like they don't care because they know you're withholding donations, but they don't care and they're pushing immigration instead. And so they were able to offset your donations with immigration grants. And Trump was taking that away, so now they had to release a strong statement and getting the support from the Marxists, the Soros crowd. And it's getting bad. You don't have to support immigration to be a faithful Catholic. And to me, that's not even an issue that I'm really concerned about. Like, it's not one of my top issues that I'm worried about. But when the USCCB takes a very strong political stance, it's a real problem. It's not a human dignity stance. And no, people don't have infinite human dignity. That's why. Otherwise, everyone would go to heaven. But there is a reasonable hope all are saved, right? It's really sad. Let me dig out my groovy pantsuit. Well, no, women deacons will wear vestments. You gotta reject it though. Find a parish where parish. Well, find a different rite. People gotta think outside the box. Do what you can. It's a time of crisis. Like, I mean, if you've watched this whole show, congratulations. First off, most people don't. But second off, you gotta think outside the box. You gotta look into other rites and try to invite them into your community. Get some people together. You know, it's a crisis. Everyone, and it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. You know, people say, "What do I do?" It's like, well, no one knows because you're kind of on your own. And every situation is different, right? You could live 5 minutes from a Latin Mass. You could live 5 hours. I think most people live at least within 5 hours of a Latin Mass, but can you make it there on time? Yeah, most people do. But all right, that's all I have for today. Lots of headlines. I don't know. You know, week by week, sometimes there's a lot of stories, sometimes there's not. This week there was a lot. I probably even skipped over some of them that may have made the show on other weeks. But anyway, we'll see what happens this week. I mean, I feel like the news is getting pretty busy. And I think usually around Christmas time it slows down. But it might be pretty busy until then. So, well, at least until next week, thank you so much for watching. This has been EVTN News. We are the laity. We will not be silent.